The Arizona Supreme Court came down and said, you know, this 1864 law that says that if a woman gets an abortion, the doctor goes to prison for 2 to 5 years, and, you know, et cetera. This 1864 law was put into effect in Arizona. No exceptions for rape or incest. Was put into effect in Arizona this week. And so yesterday, a group of Democrats in both the Arizona House and the Arizona Senate introduced legislation that would basically just take Arizona back to that 15-week, well, actually, there were several pieces of legislation. You know, one would take it back to that 15-week ban, which has already been put into law. That was the law before the Supreme Court decision. And the other, you know, was more in line with Roe v. Wade, if my understanding of it is correct. And this is where it gets really weird. This is from today's New York Times. Republican leaders in the Senate removed one bill from the day's agenda on Wednesday. In the House, a Republican lawmaker who had called for striking down the law made a motion to vote on a Democratic repeal bill. So, you know, good guy. That has sat stalled for months, but Republican leaders quickly scuttled that effort by calling for a recess and later adjourned until next Wednesday. Democrats on the Senate floor yelled, "Shame," and "Save women's lives," as their Republican colleagues filed out of the chamber. Representative Teresa Martinez, a Republican, criticized the Democrats. She called their chants and shouts extremist, insurrectionist behavior. Yeah, let's call everybody insurrectionist now so that we can just dilute the meaning of that word, you know, as a homage to Donald Trump and his January 6th crazies. She added in a floor speech, actually, she said, "There is no reason to rush on this very important topic. Nah, you know, we can let it slide." Democrats, however, say they have limited time and ways to repeal the law because it's late. I'm quoting from the New York Times, because it's late in Arizona's legislative session. But this is showing some of the divisions between the Republicans. I mean, it was a Republican who said, let's bring this Democratic bill to the floor. And then it was Republicans who shut him down. And now the caucus, you know, as you know, I call them the cokehead caucuses because they get so much money and support from the Koch network, or these right-wing billionaires affiliated with the Koch brothers. The ultra-conservative Freedom Caucus, this from the New York Times, praised the court's ruling, saying it protected innocent lives and vowed to oppose efforts to undo it. Clinics and patients scrambled to make sense of the legal and administrative confusion. So, where did this law come from? This is interesting. The Washington Post published this piece this morning by Monica Hess. The Speaker of the House in 1864 was a fellow by the name of William Claude Jones, who went by the name Claude. So I'll just quote a few sentences here and there from today's Washington Post piece. This is all based on a 1990 article published in the Journal of Arizona History by actual scholars, serious scholars. His pursuit of nubility, N-U-B, and I'll explain that in a moment, began with a marriage to Sarah Freeman, who bore him 2 children in the 1840s. His next wife was a girl named Maria del Refugio, who was 12 years old. And according to the Arizona historian, the Journal of Arizona History, he had abducted this 12-year-old that he married as his second wife. He also landed, and then he moved to Arizona. He then landed his third wife, Caroline Stevens, who was 15 at the time. At that point in time, he was 50 years old and marrying a 15-year-old. They were only married for a year, though, because in 1885, the historian writes, quote, Jones left Caroline. She never saw or heard from him again. The next year, 1868, a local girl named May was pregnant with his child. She was 14, so they got married after the birth, apparently, and had several children together until she died in 1881 at the ripe old age of 28. As the Washington Post notes, in 1864, he was elected Speaker of the House, and it was that legislature, the one Jones presided over in 1864, after he had already abandoned his first wife, married a 12-year-old, and was just weeks away from marrying a 15-year-old, although still a few years away from marrying a 14-year-old. It was that legislature that passed the law that said every person who shall administer or cause to be administered any, basically an abortion, shall be sent to prison for not less than 2 years nor more than 5 years. William Claude James. Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy Republicans are celebrating in Arizona right now, don't you know? There were a few other weird laws on the books in Arizona in 1864. President Abraham Lincoln had, in February of 1863, signed the law that created the Arizona Territory. It didn't become a state until the 20th century. But this was the so-called Howell Code, and it defined rape as carnal knowledge of any female under the age of 10 years old, with or without her consent. To put a fine point on it, the consent at issue here is purportedly coming from a 9-year-old. So 9-year-olds no, 10-year-olds yes in Arizona in 1864. They also had a law that said that if you committed perjury or suborned perjury, tried to get somebody else to commit perjury, you could get the death penalty, capital punishment. This is another one, if there was good reason to believe that a condemned woman was pregnant, the sheriff could ask a panel of 3 doctors to determine her status to the best of their ability. If she wasn't pregnant, she was executed. If she was pregnant, she was allowed to live until she gave birth, at which point the governor would move the execution forward. And also, there was another law that said the parents were allowed to accidentally beat their children to death. So this is the milieu. This is the era out of which came this abortion law that today Republicans in the Arizona House and Senate are defending, and that they fought right to the end yesterday and postponed until in the middle of next week, even having a discussion about whether to replace this 1864 law. And these guys think they're going to win elections this fall? Seriously? We'll be right back.